Declassified. March 15, 1945. The acrid smell of diesel exhaust and burning rubber filled the morning air as Staff Sergeant Tommy McKinnon crouched behind the twisted remains of a Sherman tank, watching 27 German supply trucks lumber down the muddy road toward the Belgian village of Sankt Vith. The convoy stretched nearly half a mile, each vehicle packed with ammunition, fuel, and medical supplies desperately needed by Wehrmacht forces holding the crumbling Siegfried Line. McKinnon's calloused hands, still bearing the permanent coal dust stains from 15 years at his father's forge in Pittsburgh, gripped a canvas sack containing what his commanding officer had mockingly called the stupidest collection of scrap metal he'd ever seen requisitioned by the United States Army. The morning mist clung to the Ardennes hills like smoke from a dying fire, and through his field glasses, McKinnon could see the German drivers hunched over their steering wheels, exhausted men pushing their aging vehicles through another dawn patrol. These weren't the crack panzer divisions that had terrorized Europe in 1940 or the hardened veterans who had fought at Stalingrad. These were boys barely old enough to shave and old men who should have been tending gardens, driving trucks held together with wire and prayers, carrying supplies to buy the Reich another day, another hour, another breath before the inevitable collapse. But even desperate men with obsolete equipment could kill you if you underestimated them, and McKinnon had seen too many good soldiers die learning that lesson. The sound of engines grew louder as the convoy approached the narrow bridge spanning the Arthe River, the single choke point that every German supply run had to navigate to reach the forward positions. McKinnon's unit had been ordered to stop this convoy, but their anti-tank guns had been destroyed in yesterday's artillery barrage, their bazookas were out of rockets, and the closest air support was grounded by the thick cloud cover that had settled over Belgium like a grey woolen blanket. Conventional wisdom said they were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and out of options. Conventional wisdom said they should fall back and call for reinforcements that might arrive in time to find their bodies. But Tommy McKinnon had spent his entire life looking at problems that conventional wisdom said couldn't be solved. In the forge, when a piece of steel refused to bend the way it was supposed to, you didn't give up and throw it in the scrap pile. You studied it, understood its grain structure, found its weak points, and applied pressure in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Metal had rules, immutable laws of physics that governed how it behaved under stress, and if you understood those rules better than the next man, you could make steel dance to your tune. Watching that German convoy through his field glasses, McKinnon saw not an unstoppable force but 27 individual problems with 27 individual solutions, each one dependent on rubber tires, air pressure, and the simple mechanical principles that had governed wheeled vehicles since the first cavemen figured out how to roll a log. The lead truck, a battered Opel Blitz with a canvas tarp flapping in the wind, carried the convoy commander, a Wehrmacht Hauptmann whose peaked cap was visible through the windshield. Behind him rolled an assortment of captured French vehicles, repurposed civilian trucks, and aging German models that belched black smoke and complained loudly about every mile. Each truck carried roughly 2 tons of supplies, and losing this convoy would force the German command to choose between feeding their soldiers and arming them, between medical supplies for the wounded and fuel for their remaining armor. It was the kind of choice that lost wars, one empty belly and one unfueled tank at a time. McKinnon checked his watch, 0647 hours. The convoy would reach the bridge in exactly 11 minutes, cross it in another 3, and disappear into the forest road network where intercepting them would require a full battalion and air support that didn't exist. 11 minutes to solve a problem that had stumped every military mind in the European theater. 11 minutes to prove that sometimes the best weapon against German engineering was American ingenuity, applied with the kind of stubborn creativity that came from growing up in a place where you either fixed things yourself or did without. The canvas sack at his feet contained 47 pieces of what the quartermaster had reluctantly issued as miscellaneous iron stock, each piece hand-forged in the repair depot's makeshift smithy during 3 sleepless nights when McKinnon should have been resting. To every officer who had examined his plan, they looked like crude iron nails, the kind of thing an amateur blacksmith might produce after too many beers and too little supervision. But McKinnon saw something else entirely, 47 precision instruments designed to exploit the fundamental weakness of every pneumatic tire ever manufactured, engineered to penetrate rubber at the exact angle needed to cause rapid deflation without immediate detection. But this story begins long before that morning in Belgium, long before McKinnon found himself crouched behind a destroyed tank with 11 minutes to change the course of a war. It begins in the soot-stained workshops of industrial Pittsburgh, where a 12-year-old boy first learned that the difference between success and failure often came down to understanding materials, pressure, and timing better than anyone thought possible. The global war that would eventually bring Tommy McKinnon to that Belgian hillside began on September 1, 1939, when German forces crossed into Poland, but for most Americans, it remained a distant European problem until Pearl Harbor turned it into a very personal fight. By March 1945, that fight had consumed the lives of over 400,000 American servicemen and was grinding toward its inevitable conclusion in the rubble of German cities and the mud of European battlefields. The Third Reich, once master of continental Europe, had been reduced to a shrinking pocket of resistance surrounded by Soviet forces advancing from the east, British and Canadian armies pushing down from the north, and American and French units driving up from the south. But cornered animals are often the most dangerous, and the German forces defending the Siegfried Line fought with the desperation of men who knew that surrender might mean Siberian labor camps or summary execution. Every supply convoy that reached the front lines meant another day of resistance, another 100 Allied casualties, another small victory in a war that was already lost but refused to end. For Staff Sergeant McKinnon and the 347th Engineer Combat Battalion, stopping those supply runs had become a deadly game of cat and mouse played out in the forests and villages of Belgium, where every road might hide an ambush and every building might conceal a sniper. Thomas McKinnon had been born into the smoke and fire of Pittsburgh's steel industry in 1919, the son of Sean McKinnon, a second-generation Irish immigrant who had built a reputation as one of the finest blacksmiths in Allegheny County. The McKinnon Forge occupied a corner lot in the Lawrenceville neighborhood, where the constant ring of hammer on anvil mixed with the distant roar of the blast furnaces to create the industrial symphony that defined the city. Sean McKinnon specialized in custom ironwork for the city's expanding infrastructure, ornate railings for Carnegie's mansions, specialized tools for the steel mills, and the occasional horseshoe for the delivery wagons that still clogged Pittsburgh's narrow streets. Young Tommy had started working in the forge at age 8, initially just pumping the bellows and sorting scrap metal, but gradually learning the ancient alchemy that transformed raw iron into useful tools. By age 12, he could judge the temperature of steel by its color, knew exactly how much pressure to apply when drawing out a piece of hot metal, and had developed the kind of intuitive understanding of materials that separated true craftsmen from mere laborers. His father taught him that blacksmithing was equal parts art and science, requiring not just physical strength but an understanding of metallurgy, heat treatment, and the crystalline structure of iron that determined how it would behave under stress. The forge became Tommy's classroom, laboratory, and playground, a place where abstract physics concepts became concrete realities that could burn your fingers if you miscalculated. He learned that different grades of steel required different techniques, that the carbon content determined how hard a piece could become, and that the grain structure of metal could be manipulated through precise application of heat and pressure. More importantly, he learned to see solutions where others saw problems, to understand that every material had properties that could be exploited if you understood them well enough. When the Great Depression hit Pittsburgh like a sledgehammer in 1930, the McKinnon Forge survived because Sean had diversified into repair work, fixing everything from broken wagon wheels to damaged industrial equipment. Tommy watched his father tackle increasingly complex problems with limited resources, creating specialized tools from scrap metal and developing innovative techniques that accomplished the same results as expensive factory equipment. It was during these lean years that Tommy learned the value of improvisation, the art of making do with whatever materials were available, and the stubborn persistence that refused to accept impossible as an answer. The forge work had given Tommy a lean, wiry build that disguised surprising strength, hands that could shape hot metal or thread a needle with equal precision, and a methodical approach to problem solving that would serve him well in circumstances he couldn't yet imagine. When he graduated from Lawrenceville High School in 1937, he had planned to expand the family business, perhaps adding automotive repair to their services as Pittsburgh slowly modernized. But world events had other plans, and when Japanese bombs fell on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Tommy McKinnon knew that his war was waiting for him. He enlisted in the Army Corps of Engineers on December 10, 1941, motivated partly by patriotic duty but mostly by the practical realization that his skills would be needed to build bridges, repair equipment, and solve the thousand technical problems that arose when modern armies tried to operate in hostile territory. The recruiting sergeant, impressed by McKinnon's civilian experience and confident demeanor, recommended him for advanced technical training, but Tommy insisted on going through basic training with everyone else. He wanted to learn how to be a soldier first, a specialist second. Basic training at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, proved challenging for a young man accustomed to working alone at his own pace. The rigid discipline, constant supervision, and emphasis on conformity chafed against Tommy's independent nature, and he struggled with drill sergeants who seemed more interested in breaking down recruits than building them up. His methodical approach to learning, perfect for mastering complex technical skills, frustrated instructors who demanded instant obedience rather than thoughtful analysis. By week 6, his training company commander had labeled him a potential washout and recommended additional psychological evaluation to determine his fitness for military service. The evaluation might have ended McKinnon's military career before it began, but he was fortunate to encounter Captain Robert Harrison, a former MIT engineering professor who had been commissioned to help the Army identify and develop technical talent among enlisted personnel. Harrison recognized that McKinnon's resistance to authority stemmed not from insubordination but from a craftsman's instinct to understand why something needed to be done before committing to doing it. Instead of disciplinary action, Harrison recommended McKinnon for the Army's Experimental Technical Specialist program, where his analytical nature and problem-solving instincts could be properly channeled. The technical training program at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, introduced McKinnon to military engineering on a scale he had never imagined. Instead of shoeing horses and making decorative ironwork, he learned to build Bailey bridges capable of supporting 30-ton tanks, to operate bulldozers and cranes, and to solve logistical problems involving thousands of tons of equipment and supplies. The program emphasized creative thinking and adaptability, recognizing that combat engineers often had to accomplish seemingly impossible tasks with limited resources and no time for conventional solutions. It was during this training that McKinnon first encountered the concept that would later save his life and the lives of countless others, the principle of finding an enemy's weakest point and exploiting it with minimal resources. His instructor, Major William Chin, had fought in the Pacific Theater before being reassigned to training duty, and he understood that modern warfare often came down to logistics rather than heroics. Destroy the enemy's ability to supply his forces, Chin explained to his students, and you win the war without firing a shot. But remember, the enemy knows this too, so he'll protect his supply lines with everything he has. Your job is to find the weakness he missed. McKinnon excelled in the technical program, graduating second in his class and earning promotion to sergeant before shipping out to Europe in January 1944. His first assignment with the 347th Engineer Combat Battalion involved building temporary bridges and maintaining supply roads in England as Allied forces prepared for the invasion of Normandy. The work was important but routine, giving McKinnon time to study German equipment and tactics through captured documents and intelligence reports. He became fascinated by the Wehrmacht's logistical system, particularly their dependence on a complex network of supply convoys that had to navigate increasingly dangerous territory as Allied air power gained dominance. The 347th landed on Omaha Beach on June 12, 1944, 6 days after the initial assault, and McKinnon got his first taste of combat engineering under fire. German artillery continued to harass the beachhead, and every project had to be completed while wearing a helmet and keeping a rifle within arm's reach. McKinnon's unit was responsible for clearing obstacles, repairing damaged equipment, and building the temporary infrastructure needed to support the massive Allied buildup in Normandy. It was exhausting, dangerous work that required technical precision under the worst possible conditions. But it was also educational. McKinnon observed how modern armies consumed staggering quantities of supplies, how vulnerable mechanized forces became when their fuel ran out or their spare parts were destroyed, and how even small disruptions in the supply chain could have cascading effects that paralyzed entire divisions. He began to understand warfare not as a series of heroic battles but as a complex logistical equation where victory went to whichever side could maintain the flow of supplies to its fighting units while disrupting the enemy's ability to do the same. The breakthrough that would define McKinnon's war began with a failure. In September 1944, his unit had been assigned to destroy a German supply depot near the town of Falaise, but conventional explosives had proven ineffective against the hardened bunkers protecting the facility. Several attempts had cost the lives of good men while accomplishing nothing except alerting the Germans to Allied intentions. Watching yet another failed assault, Mackinnon found himself studying not the heavily defended depot but the unguarded road leading to it, where German trucks arrived and departed with mechanical regularity. The trucks themselves were a mixed collection of vehicles that reflected the Wehrmacht's increasingly desperate situation. Aging German models mixed with captured French and Belgian vehicles, civilian trucks pressed into military service, and even horse-drawn wagons when fuel shortages became too severe. But regardless of their origin, they all shared one critical vulnerability: they rolled on rubber tires that could be punctured, deflated, or destroyed with relatively simple tools. The revelation hit Mackinnon with the force of a lightning bolt. Instead of attacking the fortress, attack the supply line. Instead of fighting the enemy's strength, exploit his weakness. The problem was execution. German supply convoys traveled under heavy guard, moved quickly through dangerous territory, and varied their routes to avoid predictable patterns. Conventional sabotage techniques required placing charges or obstacles directly in the convoy's path, which meant getting close enough to heavily armed guards to plant explosives or dig tank traps. Most attempts resulted in dead saboteurs and undamaged supply runs. What Mackinnon needed was a way to disable vehicles from a distance, preferably without alerting the convoy to the attack until it was too late to respond effectively. The solution came to him while watching a German convoy navigate a particularly treacherous stretch of road near the Belgian border. The trucks moved slowly and predictably, following tire tracks left by previous vehicles to avoid the soft spots and hidden obstacles that could bog down a heavily loaded vehicle. Their drivers were exhausted, running on minimal sleep and maximum caffeine, focused entirely on the immediate challenges of keeping 2 tons of truck and cargo moving forward through increasingly hostile territory. They weren't looking for threats, they were looking for potholes. Mackinnon realized that the convoy's greatest strength, their predictable routing along established tracks, was also their greatest weakness. If you could place obstacles in those tracks, obstacles that looked like ordinary road debris but were actually precision-engineered tire destroyers, you could disable an entire convoy without firing a shot or exposing yourself to return fire. The key was designing obstacles that would penetrate tires quickly and completely while appearing harmless until the moment of contact. That night, working by candlelight in an abandoned barn, Mackinnon began sketching designs for what he privately called road nails, though they bore little resemblance to ordinary carpenter's nails. Each device would be roughly 4 inches long, with a hardened steel point capable of penetrating the thickest truck tire, a specially designed shaft that would create maximum damage once it entered the tire, and a flat base that would orient the point upward regardless of how the device landed. The physics were simple: a sharp point concentrating the full weight of a loaded truck into a contact area smaller than a pencil tip would generate enough pressure to penetrate any tire ever manufactured. But the engineering was complex. The steel had to be hard enough to penetrate rubber and canvas without breaking, but not so brittle that it would shatter on impact with stones or other road debris. The point had to be sharp enough to penetrate instantly but shaped to cause rapid air loss rather than a slow leak that might allow a truck to reach safety before becoming disabled. The base had to be heavy enough to keep the point oriented upward but not so heavy that the entire device would sink into soft mud or be easily spotted by observant drivers. Mackinnon spent 3 weeks experimenting with different designs, testing prototypes on discarded tires in the unit's vehicle depot, refining the metallurgy and heat treatment to achieve exactly the right balance of hardness and durability. His commanding officer, Major Samuel Peterson, remained skeptical but allowed the experiments to continue, partly because Mackinnon was using his own off-duty time and scavenged materials, and partly because conventional approaches to stopping German supply convoys had proven consistently ineffective. The breakthrough came when Mackinnon realized that the road nails didn't need to destroy tires instantly, they just needed to cause rapid deflation at the worst possible moment. By creating a hollow shaft with carefully placed perforations, he could design devices that would allow air to escape quickly once they penetrated the tire, while the truck's weight and momentum drove the nail deeper into the rubber. The result was catastrophic tire failure that would occur within seconds of initial contact, giving drivers no time to compensate or reach safety. The first field test took place on March 10, 1945, when Mackinnon deployed 15 of his road nails along a secondary road frequently used by German patrols. The test target was a single motorcycle courier who made regular runs between German positions, a relatively low-value target that wouldn't provoke massive retaliation if the experiment succeeded. Mackinnon positioned himself in a concealed observation post 200 meters from the road, watching through field glasses as the motorcycle approached the section of road where his devices were hidden. The motorcycle hit the first road nail at approximately 0930 hours, and the results exceeded Mackinnon's most optimistic projections. The front tire deflated instantly, sending the motorcycle into an uncontrolled skid that threw the rider into a roadside ditch. The motorcycle itself slid another 30 meters before hitting a second road nail that destroyed the rear tire and left the vehicle completely immobilized. The German courier, shaken but uninjured, abandoned his motorcycle and continued his mission on foot, apparently unaware that his vehicle's destruction had been caused by anything other than road hazards. Mackinnon recovered the motorcycle after dark and discovered that his road nails had performed exactly as designed. The first device had penetrated the front tire completely, creating a hole that would have been impossible to repair in the field even if the rider had carried a complete tire repair kit. The second device had not only destroyed the tire but had also punctured the inner tube in 3 places, ensuring that no amount of field expedient repairs could have restored the wheel to service. Most importantly, the devices had remained completely concealed until the moment of impact, appearing to be nothing more than ordinary road debris to casual observation. The success of the motorcycle test convinced Major Peterson to authorize a larger field trial, but it also created a new problem. Manufacturing enough road nails to disable an entire convoy would require more time and resources than Mackinnon could provide working alone in his spare time. The solution came from an unexpected source when Corporal James "Hambone" Hamilton, a former auto mechanic from Detroit, volunteered to help with production after seeing the destroyed motorcycle. Hamilton had spent years repairing tire damage and understood exactly how Mackinnon's devices worked, but more importantly, he had ideas for streamlining the manufacturing process. Working together, Mackinnon and Hamilton established a small production line in the repair depot's machine shop, where they could use military equipment to forge, heat-treat, and finish the road nails with much greater precision and efficiency than Mackinnon had achieved working alone. Hamilton's mechanical expertise complemented Mackinnon's metallurgical knowledge, and within a week they had developed a standardized production process that could produce 20 finished road nails per day using scavenged steel and the depot's existing equipment. The production process began with steel salvaged from destroyed vehicles, preferably leaf springs or axle components that contained the high-carbon steel needed for proper hardness. Mackinnon would cut the steel into rough blanks using the depot's cutting torch, then heat each blank to precisely the right temperature in a makeshift forge improvised from a modified engine block. The hot steel was then forged into the basic nail shape using a power hammer normally used for straightening bent vehicle frames, with Hamilton operating the controls while Mackinnon shaped each piece by hand. Heat treatment required the most critical precision, as the steel had to be hardened enough to penetrate truck tires without becoming so brittle that it would break on impact with stones or other road debris. Mackinnon had discovered through painful experimentation that the optimal hardness was achieved by heating the finished nails to a bright orange color, then quenching them in used motor oil rather than water. The oil cooling was slower than water cooling, producing steel that was hard but not brittle, tough enough to survive battlefield conditions while sharp enough to penetrate the heaviest truck tires. The final step involved grinding each nail point to the precise angle needed for optimal penetration, then testing each finished device on sample tires to ensure consistent performance. Mackinnon had calculated that the ideal point angle was 23 degrees, sharp enough to penetrate instantly but not so sharp that the point would break off if it hit a stone. Hamilton rigged up a simple grinding jig using parts from a destroyed generator, allowing them to maintain consistent point angles even when working by lamplight in the cramped machine shop. By March 14, 1945, Mackinnon and Hamilton had produced 47 road nails and were ready to test their innovation against a real German convoy. Intelligence reports indicated that a major supply run was scheduled for the following morning, carrying ammunition and medical supplies to German positions defending the approaches to the Rhine River. The convoy would consist of approximately 30 vehicles, including several heavy trucks carrying artillery shells and at least 2 ambulances loaded with wounded soldiers being evacuated from forward positions. Major Peterson had initially planned to attack the convoy with conventional weapons, but the loss of the battalion's anti-tank guns during the previous day's artillery barrage had eliminated that option. Air support was unavailable due to heavy cloud cover that showed no signs of clearing, and the nearest Allied units with heavy weapons were too far away to provide timely assistance. Peterson faced a choice between allowing the convoy to pass unmolested or attempting to stop it with small arms fire that would likely result in heavy Allied casualties without guaranteeing success. McKinnon's road nails offered a third option, a way to disable the entire convoy without exposing Allied personnel to return fire, while creating the impression that mechanical failures rather than enemy action had stopped the German vehicles. If the plan worked, the Germans would be forced to abandon their supplies and either walk back to their own lines or surrender to Allied forces. If it failed, the convoy would pass through undamaged, but McKinnon's unit would remain undetected and available for future missions. The deployment began at 0300 hours on March 15, when McKinnon and 2 volunteers, Corporal Hamilton and Private First Class Robert "Bobby" Chen, the son of his former training officer, moved into position along the road that German convoys used to approach the bridge over the Ahr River. Intelligence indicated that the convoy would pass through this section between 0630 and 0700 hours, giving McKinnon's team approximately 3.5 hours to prepare the road and withdraw to safe observation positions. McKinnon had spent weeks studying this particular stretch of road, noting that German drivers consistently followed the same path to avoid soft spots and hidden obstacles. The road surface was hard-packed dirt mixed with gravel, perfect for concealing small metal objects but firm enough to support heavily loaded trucks without creating deep ruts. More importantly, the road curved sharply around a small hill approximately 200 meters before the bridge, forcing drivers to slow down and concentrate on steering rather than watching for potential threats. The team worked methodically, placing road nails at carefully calculated intervals along the tire tracks left by previous German convoys. McKinnon had determined that optimal spacing required 1 nail every 15 feet, close enough to ensure that every truck would hit at least 2 devices, but far enough apart to prevent drivers from spotting a pattern before it was too late to stop. Each nail was positioned point up and partially buried in loose gravel, invisible to casual observation but perfectly positioned to penetrate any tire that passed over it. The placement process required extraordinary precision, as each nail had to be oriented correctly and camouflaged effectively while remaining securely anchored in position. McKinnon used a small gardening trowel to create shallow depressions for each device, then covered them with loose gravel and dirt until they appeared to be ordinary road debris. Hamilton followed behind, brushing away footprints and other signs of human activity, while Chen maintained security and monitored radio communications for any indication that German patrols might discover their work. By 0530 hours, all 47 road nails were in position along a 300-meter stretch of road immediately before the bridge approach. The team withdrew to a concealed observation post approximately 150 meters away, equipped with field glasses, radio equipment, and small arms for self-defense if the plan went wrong. McKinnon checked his watch repeatedly as the minutes crawled by, knowing that German punctuality was legendary and that the convoy would appear exactly when intelligence had predicted. At 0647 hours, the sound of diesel engines echoed through the morning mist as the German convoy approached the prepared section of road. McKinnon watched through his field glasses as the lead vehicle, an Opel Blitz truck carrying the convoy commander, rounded the curve and entered the kill zone. The driver was clearly exhausted, hunched over the steering wheel and focused entirely on keeping his truck on the narrow road. Behind him stretched 26 additional vehicles, ranging from heavy cargo trucks to light staff cars, all following the same tire tracks that would lead them directly over McKinnon's concealed road nails. The lead truck hit the first road nail at exactly 0649 hours, and the effect was immediate and devastating. The right front tire exploded with a sound like a gunshot, sending the truck into an uncontrolled swerve that carried it directly over 2 more road nails before the driver could react. Within seconds, both front tires were completely destroyed, and the truck ground to a halt as its rims dug into the road surface. The convoy commander leaped from the cab, shouting orders in German while gesturing frantically at his disabled vehicle. But the lead truck's problems were just beginning. The vehicles behind it had no time to stop or change course, and within minutes the entire convoy was strung out along the road with truck after truck falling victim to McKinnon's hidden devices. The second vehicle, a Mercedes staff car, lost both rear tires simultaneously and spun sideways across the road, blocking traffic in both directions. The third vehicle, another Opel truck loaded with ammunition, suffered complete tire failure on its left side and tipped over into the roadside ditch, spilling artillery shells across the landscape. The sound of deflating tires and grinding metal filled the air as truck after truck fell victim to the road nails. German soldiers poured out of disabled vehicles, some cursing the apparent mechanical failures, others suspecting enemy action but unable to identify the source of their problems. Several drivers attempted to continue driving on flat tires, only to discover that their vehicles became completely immobilized once the road nails penetrated the rims and jammed the wheel assemblies. McKinnon watched in fascination as his precisely engineered chaos unfolded with mechanical inevitability. Each road nail performed exactly as designed, penetrating tires instantly and causing rapid deflation that left vehicles stranded in the middle of the road. The Germans had trained for ambushes, artillery attacks, and air strikes, but they had no procedures for dealing with simultaneous mechanical failures affecting every vehicle in a 30-truck convoy. Their radio calls became increasingly frantic as unit commanders reported impossible mechanical problems that defied explanation. Within 11 minutes of the first tire failure, 27 German vehicles sat disabled along the road, their cargoes intact but their mission completely compromised. The convoy commander, Hauptmann Friedrich Müller, stood in the middle of the chaos trying to understand how every truck in his unit could suffer identical tire failures in the same location on the same morning. His radioman reported that division headquarters was demanding an explanation, but Müller had none to offer except the obvious impossibility that 30 vehicles had simultaneously developed mechanical problems. The German response was swift but predictable. Unable to determine whether the tire failures resulted from enemy action or mechanical malfunction, Müller ordered his drivers to attempt field repairs while his security detachment established a defensive perimeter. But McKinnon's road nails had been designed to make field repairs impossible. The devices not only destroyed tires but also damaged the wheel rims, punctured inner tubes in multiple places, and in several cases had jammed so tightly in the wheel assemblies that they couldn't be removed without specialized tools. McKinnon keyed his radio and reported the successful completion of Operation Iron Nail, as he had privately designated his mission, to Major Peterson. The convoy was immobilized, its cargo was intact and available for capture, and most importantly, no Allied personnel had been exposed to enemy fire during the operation. Peterson's response was immediate: "Outstanding work, Sergeant. Remain in position and observe until relief arrives. Do not, repeat, do not expose yourself unnecessarily. We'll have infantry there within the hour." But the Germans weren't finished. As reports of the convoy's problems reached higher command levels, Hauptmann Müller received orders to salvage whatever supplies could be carried on foot and abandon the disabled vehicles. German soldiers began transferring ammunition, medical supplies, and other critical materials from trucks to backpacks, preparing for a fighting withdrawal that would allow them to save at least a portion of their cargo. It was exactly the kind of disciplined response McKinnon had expected from professional soldiers, but it had been anticipated and planned for. The road nails had been positioned not just to disable vehicles but to create maximum confusion and delay during any salvage operation. Disabled trucks blocked the road in both directions, making it impossible for recovery vehicles to reach the site. Scattered cargo and debris created obstacles that slowed movement and made it difficult to organize efficient supply transfer. Most importantly, the Germans had to assume they were under observation and potential attack, forcing them to divide their attention between salvage operations and security measures. Allied infantry arrived at 0751 hours, approximately 1 hour and 2 minutes after the first German truck had hit McKinnon's road nails. The German salvage operation was still in progress, but less than 20% of the original cargo had been successfully transferred to portable containers. Faced with overwhelming Allied force and no hope of completing their mission, Hauptmann Müller made the pragmatic decision to surrender his remaining personnel rather than fight a hopeless battle for cargo that was already lost. The final tally was even more impressive than Mackinnon had dared hope: 27 German vehicles disabled, over 60 tons of ammunition and supplies captured intact, 43 enemy soldiers taken prisoner, and 0 Allied casualties. The entire operation, from initial contact to final surrender, had taken exactly 67 minutes, most of which involved waiting for the German convoy to arrive and watching Mackinnon's road nails do their work. It was the kind of tactical victory that military textbooks described in theoretical terms but that rarely occurred in the chaotic reality of combat operations. Major Peterson's after-action report credited Mackinnon with developing an innovative and highly effective technique for interdicting enemy supply operations with minimal risk to Allied personnel and maximum disruption to enemy logistics. The report was forwarded through channels to the European Theater headquarters, where it attracted attention from officers responsible for developing new tactics and techniques for the final push into Germany. Within weeks, requests for technical specifications and production details were arriving from engineer units throughout the Allied command structure. Mackinnon found himself temporarily assigned to the theater engineer section as a technical advisor, responsible for training other units in the production and deployment of road nails. It was satisfying work that made use of all his skills, from blacksmithing and metallurgy to tactical planning and training, but it also took him away from the 347th Engineer Combat Battalion and the men who had become his family over nearly 2 years of combat operations. He missed the camaraderie of the field engineers, the satisfaction of building bridges and clearing obstacles, and the straightforward problems that had clear solutions. But the war was ending, and Mackinnon's innovation had played a small but significant role in hastening that conclusion. Road nails became standard equipment for Allied engineer units operating behind enemy lines, and intelligence reports indicated that German supply operations had become increasingly cautious and ineffective as word of the new threat spread through Wehrmacht logistics commands. Convoy speeds decreased, security requirements increased, and the overall efficiency of German supply operations declined measurably during the final months of the European war. Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, and Mackinnon found himself facing the prospect of returning to civilian life after 4 years of military service. The army offered him a commission and the opportunity to remain on active duty, but the appeal of returning to Pittsburgh and the family forge proved stronger than the attractions of a military career. He accepted his discharge in September 1945, returning home as a decorated combat veteran with technical skills and leadership experience that would serve him well in the post-war economy. The Mackinnon Forge had survived the war years under his father's management, but Sean Mackinnon was growing older and was ready to turn over daily operations to his son. Tommy found that civilian blacksmithing seemed almost anticlimactic after years of solving life-and-death problems under combat conditions, but he gradually developed an appreciation for the peaceful rhythm of commercial metalwork. The forge expanded into general fabrication and repair services, taking advantage of Pittsburgh's post-war industrial boom and Tommy's reputation as a problem solver who could create solutions that others couldn't imagine. Mackinnon married Mary Catherine O'Brien in 1947, and they raised 3 children in the same Lawrenceville neighborhood where Tommy had learned his trade. He never spoke much about his wartime experiences, preferring to focus on the future rather than dwelling on the past, but he occasionally surprised his children with impromptu lessons in metallurgy, engineering, or problem-solving that reflected hard-won knowledge from his military service. His daughter later recalled that her father could look at any mechanical problem and immediately understand not just what was wrong but why it had failed and how to prevent similar failures in the future. The Korean War brought new requests for Tommy's expertise, as military engineers sought to adapt road nail technology for use against North Korean and Chinese supply operations. Mackinnon provided technical consultation and training, but declined invitations to return to active duty, feeling that his family obligations and civilian business took precedence over military service. His innovations, however, continued to serve Allied forces, and captured enemy documents from Korea indicated that Communist forces had developed countermeasures specifically designed to defeat American road nail tactics. McKinnon's later years were marked by quiet satisfaction with a life well lived and problems well solved. The forge continued to prosper under his management, eventually expanding into specialized architectural metalwork that graced buildings throughout Pittsburgh and western Pennsylvania. He served on the board of the local veterans organization, mentored young veterans returning from Vietnam, and occasionally lectured at Carnegie Mellon University on practical metallurgy and problem-solving techniques. He passed away peacefully in 1987 at age 68, leaving behind a legacy that extended far beyond the immediate impact of his wartime innovation. Road nails had evolved into more sophisticated area denial weapons used by special operations forces worldwide, but the fundamental principle remained unchanged: find the enemy's weakness, exploit it with minimal resources, and achieve maximum effect through superior understanding of materials and mechanics rather than superior firepower. McKinnon's funeral drew veterans from 3 wars, engineers from across the industrial Midwest, and former students who credited him with teaching them that every problem had a solution if you understood it well enough and refused to accept conventional limitations. The Military Honor Guard included representatives from the Corps of Engineers, reflecting institutional recognition that McKinnon's contributions to military engineering had permanent value that transcended any single conflict or campaign. Today, road nail tactics are taught at the Army Engineer School as an example of innovative thinking applied to tactical problems, and McKinnon's name appears in military engineering textbooks alongside other pioneers who advanced their field through creative problem solving. The original 47 road nails, carefully preserved after their successful deployment in Belgium, are displayed at the National Museum of World War II in New Orleans, where they serve as tangible reminders that sometimes the most effective weapons are also the simplest ones. The lesson of Tommy McKinnon's war extends beyond military tactics to the broader principle that innovation often comes from unexpected sources and that the most effective solutions frequently challenge conventional wisdom. A blacksmith's understanding of metallurgy, combined with a mechanic's knowledge of tire construction and an engineer's appreciation for tactical leverage, produced a weapon that accomplished more with 47 pieces of scrap metal than entire battalions had achieved with conventional firearms and explosives. In 11 minutes on a muddy road in Belgium, McKinnon proved that American ingenuity, applied with precision and determination, could overcome any obstacle that enemy engineering could create. The numbers tell the story with mathematical precision: 27 vehicles disabled, 60 tons of supplies captured, 43 prisoners taken, 0 Allied casualties, and 67 minutes from initial contact to final victory. But behind those numbers lies a deeper truth about the nature of innovation, the value of understanding materials and mechanics, and the eternal principle that victory often belongs not to the strongest force but to the one that finds and exploits the enemy's fundamental weaknesses. Tommy McKinnon's road nails changed the course of a war not through superior firepower but through superior thinking, proving once again that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal is the human mind applied creatively to seemingly impossible problems.